cord to this computer. All right. Okay. Healthy living inspirations. All right. We are going to share the screen. And we're going to go over here. Can you see these slides? Yeah. Give me a thumbs up. Can see. Awesome. All right. We're going to start the class tonight, which is Toxic Puzzle. This is some information that ties into supplements that we're buying. Because as you see this documentary, you're going to learn that a lot of these algae that are very toxic that they're harvesting is put in supplements in today's world, in the market. We're going to go over that. So this is why we beware. Do not start buying things on the internet that has certain algae in them that they get what they call antioxidants from. Humans are exposed to many negative contributions to health, toxic exposures, poor dietary choices, and emotional trauma. And actually, here in this class, I cover all of it. To name a few. Fortunately, there are also positive contributions that can be made to health for clean environments, positive associations. We talked about positive associations. All right, let's get rid of that SWAT dust mosquitoes that bring malaria. Good diets and nutritional supplementation. So this is a class that is going to play the movie Toxic Puzzle. But before I do, I want to show you a few things about the fact that the algae that is being used in supplementation is part of what we're going to take a look at. The toxic puzzle. Individuals are always shocked when diagnosed with Alzheimer's, ALS, MS, Parkinson's. These are neurological issues. This movie is narrated by Harrison Ford, and it addresses the fact that these neurological health challenges in the body appear in clusters and often associated with common drinking water. The video is a work of 50 different scientists searching for hidden chemicals in the water that are toxic to the neurological system. Well, your nerves, okay, your spinal cord. Some of the first things that's formed in a baby in vitro is the spinal cord. And then if a mother is exposed to these neurotoxic chemicals, then it can influence that baby. An article in Scientific American 1994, written by Wayne Carmichael, he was warning ingesting these algae products as supplements. You guys are going to want this because of the likelihood of potential harmful contaminants contributing to what? Liver cancer and nerve damage. I'm going to have to send this out because this is a direct quote from this movie. Dr. First, remember Dr. First? All right, he is our head of our scientific advisory board, was very concerned about this very issue and spoke against using algae and all these algae that they use in supplementation because of this. He was a world-leading toxicologist. And so that is why he would not use these algae in our formulas. Wow. Wow. So let's take a look at 97% of supplements are synthetic. 80% supplements are mislabeled. And then right here, we talk about the New York Attorney General shopping, the GNC, the Walmart, the Walgreens, and the Target stores, and finding that 80% plus of all the supplements do not have in them what is on the label. Wow. So this is one of the sources of their antioxidants that we talk about a lot, which is Dunaliella salina, which is really pond scum. And this is where you hear, Louis talk about, that's pond scum. Well, that's pond scum. Toxicity and trophic transfers. Okay. It's just called Dunaliella salina. And it's a metabolic engineering of Dunaliella salina for production of supplements. So they actually manufacture this algae in order to harvest it, in order to sell it to supplement industries for supplements, and call it a carotenoid, or they call it an antioxidant. Dunaliella salina is commercially important marine algae producing high amounts of carotenoids because when they agitate it, it emits a carotenoid, kind of like pine bark does. But is this for human consumption? No, it's not for human consumption. The present study reports for the first time metabolic engineering carotenoid biosynthesis of Dunaliella salina for carotenoid production. So in other words, this is them producing on the left side, they're producing out of Australia Dunaliella salina for the harvesting of supplementation. Wow. Down there, and I'm just playing a real quick version. This is Dunaliella salina from Australia. This is where these companies get their carotenoid or get their antioxidant. You can see right here. This is a news clip. It's only a few seconds long, but I wanted you to see it for yourself before we watch this movie called Toxic Puzzle. Wow, 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 wow. Wow. I know, you're breathing that. Yes, you're right. Spirulina. You ever heard of spirulina? It's in every single product that has an antioxidant. You pick up every one. It's spirulina, spirulina, spirulina. Green algae, blue-green algae, spirulina, all these shakes, all of these plant powders, they're all loaded with this stuff. Oh my goodness. So concerns about contamination with heavy metals and mycotoxins, mercury and other toxic heavy metals have been found in some of these supplements derived from spirulina. Consumption of such spirulina supplements could lead to accumulation of heavy metals. This is where we saw the liver damage, the nerve damage. What's more is some spirulina supplements have been found to contain mycotoxins that are toxic to the liver and promote tumors. Wow. So they also state that blue-green algae could cause liver damage, stomach, vomiting. I get this right from the reports that have been reported and shown cause damage in the body from this particular product. And you can see lawsuits and the targets of the USDA testing it, the consumer lab testing it, expanding their business because it's high demand because everybody's looking. The number one internet search is for how can I boost my immune system? And this is what you're going to find. You're going to find this pond scum. That's what they're going to offer you, this pond scum to boost your immune system. Dunaliella salina. This is $122 million business and a market by 2028. So in other words, everybody's demanding it. It's very cheap and they harvest it. You just saw where they're harvested out of Australia. But again, when they test it, it's loaded with mycotoxins. It's loaded with heavy metals and mycotoxins. The cloning of carotenoids. They actually are cloning carotenoids. So these are like synthetic carotenoids they're putting in supplements. Synthetic carotenoids. I'm actually going to play this biosynthetic route. Okay, bottom of the food chain, marine species. Let's see if we can play this for about 40 seconds here. By the way, you all cannot hear it. So I'm going to go right now and try because, okay. Mary, do you remember what we did? Mary. What did we do in order I need to know what we did in order. Maybe it's theater. Okay, what did we do? Because I'm not figuring it out, but you wrote it down and I didn't send it to me.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure it out here so we can play it.
All right, go to
Menu. Okay, we got a menu. We went over to
go
audio.
to audio.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and go back up to.
I'm gonna go
standard,
back up to standard. Okay.
and then come back over. Let's see to audio. Let's see.
We went to
Speaker.
speaker or audio
There you
output.
go. We got enable, so you got that on there.
And how about audio
So
output?
Go back up 6. Give that work.
To fixed.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Let's see if that worked. Nope, that didn't work. Let me check the volume. Let me check the volume on this. Maybe it's the volume too low and the volume is not up. Maybe it's the volume the whole time. Maybe it's the volume.
Okay, try light. There we go.
When all else fails, go to the volume.
Good job, Terry.
All right, what did we just see? We saw them in a petri dish cloning carotenoids. Now, do you want to trust your health to a cloned carotenoid? Do you want to trust your health to an algae that is full of all kinds of toxins? For me in my house, no. So, okay. So what are some companies that actually do that? Okay. Oh, I threw this in because I get asked this all the time. What's the difference between now vitamins? I hear this all the time. There's actually churches and everything that promote now vitamins. Take a picture of this so you'll have it and you don't have to ask me anymore. What's the difference between Neolife and now vitamins? But Neolife is whole, human, full family profiles. Now is pine bark, pond scum, synthetic, and isolates. SAB seal is in the Neolife, highest standards internationally. Now Vitamins operates under a good manufacturing practice, which means they sweep the floors and keep their business in order, their bookwork. Neolife tests for over 200 toxins with a 0 tolerance. Now Vitamins do not. Neolife has clinical human studies to prove its benefit. Now Vitamin does not. Neolife has peer-reviewed medical journals. Now Vitamins do not. Neolife salmon oil has all 8 omegas, is cold pressed. Now Vitamins is krill oil that's been boiled and extracted through chemicals. Vitamin E in Neolife is cold pressed wheat germ oil. The Now Vitamins is not organic soy or sunflower oil and only has a few of the E, not all 8. The Neolife operates under a pharmaceutical license for label integrity. And the Now Vitamins operates under Ryder Labs. Now, which one are you going to choose for your health? Oh my goodness. I think I choose Neolife. All right, everybody snap that picture. I should put that. And who else uses pond scum? Who else uses pond scum? AIM, Purium, Plexus, Now Vitamin, Shackley, Juice Plus, and Amway. Oh my goodness. I just found out today as I was looking for Metagenics, because I knew on the chart that big pharma and investment firms own Metagenics, but I just found out Amway owns Metagenics. Oh my goodness. So snap that picture. Could say the same things about it. Here's another quick video about spirulina and blue-green algae.
It also has to extend the timing of the Olympus, spirulina. The story starts in Guam, where the Chamorro people were eating perhaps the world's cutest bat, the flying fox. That was a mistake, since it turns out the flying fox's favorite fruit is from this funky looking tree whose watery roots concentrate a toxin produced by some rare algae. The result was that the Chamorro started dying of something called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Parkinsonism, dementia, basically a combination of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and Lou Gehrig's disease. And we used to think neurotoxins were limited to rare exotic algae, but now we know otherwise. We now know that almost all blue-green algae can produce neurotoxins like BMAA. It turns out the only two places one may be likely to find BMAA is in the brains of Alzheimer's patients and at the local natural food store in the form of blue-green algae. So until we know more, I recommend leaving that particular product out of your cart. And this Spirulina, the other palm scum, well, it's good for our blood pressure and our cholesterol, and it seems to work wonders against seasonal allergies, but Spirulina may dissolve our muscles from the inside out. It's always better when our food doesn't kill us.
All right, now I'm going to play this one. It's a very short one also, just 54 seconds.
What's the latest on Spirulina supplements? The reason I told everyone to throw their Spirulina away was that it was found to produce hepatotoxins. While blue-green algae supplements had the brain toxins, Spirulina supplements were found to have liver toxins. Should we continue to avoid this stuff? Yes. Now, Spirulina can boast neurotoxins as well. In 2009, a potent neurotoxin was found in Spirulina supplements for the first time.
All right, so I think we're getting the picture. We getting the picture? We're getting the picture.
I'd also recommend staying away from the pain. What?
All right, so what are we going to trust? We're going to trust the SAB seal, right? Why? Because we test 200 toxins, and that's families, and that's over 2,000 types of chemicals that don't belong in our supplements. Who does that in today's world? The only company I found that does that is Neolife. And furthermore, have anybody here looked in our back, not our back office, but our neolifeblog.com? Neolifeblog.com. It tells you in our neolifeblog.com that our chocolate shake is not available because an ingredient didn't pass our SAB quality test. It tells you that the Elevate was not available. It's now available, but it wasn't available. It became available yesterday because an ingredient did not pass our quality assurance. It tells you that our G1 laundry is on hold because it did not pass one of the ingredients. Now, who does that? Who stops all production, throws away a beginning of the production batch because it doesn't pass the quality standards? Nobody does that in this world, in the world of economics and corporations and the way that they operate, except for Neolife. Oh my goodness. So what has that done for me? I've seen this consistency for the past 11 years that I've been involved, but they've been consistent at this for 66 and a half years here in America. So full traceability, farm to table production philosophy, SAB seal guarantees the finest, safest, most effective products in the world. So who are you going to trust for your health? You're going to trust a company. Now, what did I say? A company that understands what? Credibility, character, integrity. Oh my goodness, they operate the same way to your face as they do every day, all day long, in all their processes of their business. Superior products from home care, health care, personal care, and skin care, all across the board, operate under these amazing qualifying. So here we go. We're going to watch the movie Toxic Puzzle. Let's go on the side here. Let me see if I can stretch this out to the full. Let me see if I turn it on. Okay, can anybody tell me how to widen the screen?
You have to go down in the corner.
Oh,
There.
well, yeah.
I put it up.
Okay, I'm doing it, but it's not responding. It's not responding. Why would I want to share it? Oh, you know what that is? That's AirPlay.
Can you blow my nose?
There we go.
Life on Earth was created in the primordial ocean with sunlight as an energy source. Cyanobacteria were among the first living organisms, and they created oxygen that soon helped form an atmosphere and the basis for all other life on Earth. Cyanobacteria gave life where there was none. Are the same organisms today, fed by human pollution and climate change, claiming human lives as nature's revenge?
Having advice, my advice is make sure you drink clean water. Don't drink green smelling water. You don't get exposed to cyanobacteria.
And we know, for example, in Australia, that there are very large blooms of blue-green algae that occur often, and the size and frequency of those blooms is increasing with increasing temperatures, increasing global temperatures, increasing rising sea levels, etc.
Because we have proven the link between environmental health, health of the environment, and human. And people have to understand that this is not a theory, this is fact.
This is like a slow toxin, and it's a silent killer in a sense, because we don't know that it's in the water that we're drinking. We don't know it's in the food that we're eating, but we now know that it can cause these neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, it is. I was an ALS patient maybe once every 2 weeks. I see 2 to 3 new or follow-up ALS patients every week. I see the devastation it has on families, on patients.
You know, many of us have written grants on this topic and we can't get traction. So the funding has come from the private sector, not from the public sector.
I think the fact that there is an environmental cause is somehow going to make this research less likely to be pursued, less likely to be accepted by society.
I think this has been the missing puzzle piece, because there's a lot of very interesting work going on, but a direct connection between what we're doing and human disease, Alzheimer's disease, the Guam disease, ALS, Parkinson's, that puzzle piece has been missing.
As a biologist and investigative filmmaker, Bo Landon has for decades brought important environmental issues to the forefront worldwide.
Well, my hunt for the hidden killer will start with a journey to Jackson, Wyoming. I'm about to meet with Paul Cox, an ethnobotanist, who's going to take me on a global quest to solve a puzzle that scientists have tried to solve for a very, very long time. And that is to find a cure for ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. But my journey with Paul Cox actually started 27 years ago. Right now, I'm driving through a fairly barren western landscape in the United States. This is Wyoming. But when I first met Paul Cox, it was in a totally different environment. That was in the rainforest of the South Pacific in Western Samoa.
Don't look, it's flowering here. In fact, you know, this is the first time I've seen the flowers. It's used for anti-inflammation activities here. And we've taken this to the National Cancer Institute. We're testing against 39 different types of human cell cancer. And then we're also looking at its activity against the AIDS virus. So our hope here, of course, is that we can find something of use. It's really important to make herbarium voucher specimens of the plants we collect here. That way, if there's ever any question about the botanical identity of these plants, we can answer it. So if we find something of interest here, we can come back and recollect it. We can tell the people which plants they are, and perhaps the people could even grow these things someday if they turn out to be useful for medicine and help their local economy.
Paul Cox is a different kind of scientist, driven by a passion for people, nature, and cultures worldwide. As a scientist, he works on the frontiers of human understanding. And as an ethnobotanist, he has a profound respect for traditional knowledge.
My thinking was that indigenous people have thousands of years of experience in treating illness, recognizing illness, using the plants around them to make remedies. So I decided I would focus on ethnomedicine. I'd try to use patterns of disease and wellness among indigenous people to yield clues that we could then test in the laboratory to come up with new drugs. I thought about going back to medical schools, becoming an oncologist. I realized, well, maybe as a doctor, I could treat hundreds of patients, but if I could discover a new drug, it would help millions of people, and I thought it was worth the gamble. And then the big quest to me was to try to find something to treat ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, motor neuron disease, known in the United States as Lou Gehrig's disease. And this is probably one of the worst diseases known. People who get this essentially have a death sentence. There have been no drugs discovered since 1993, not one, for this terrible, terrible illness. So even though the shot of success is so small, I think it's worth my life to try to find a new drug for these poor people.
This story has its origin 15 years ago on the island of Guam in the Pacific Ocean. In some villages after World War II, almost 25% of the local Chamorro people died in an illness that looked like a combination of ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. The doctors had no clue what caused these severe neurological diseases. The Chamorro people knew that flour made from cycad seeds and used for tortillas was toxic, so the seeds were carefully rinsed. But toxic levels in the flour were low and could not explain the illnesses. Paul Cox knew Chamorro people also liked to eat flying foxes, fruit-eating bats, which themselves foraged on the cycad seeds. The scientists found the concentration of toxins in the flying fox flesh to be 100 times higher than in cycad flour. But how did the toxins get into the plants to start with? That's the first piece of the puzzle Paul looked for.
If you look around, near the base of the soil, you can find very unusual coral. There's something really fantastic about the show.
So you're saying this is actually the root zone.
That's a specialized media, and it harbors something truly incredible. There, that's a good one. See that green layer, those are cyanobacteria, and they live in symbiosis with the tree. Well, the tree gets nitrogen fixed, so fertilizer. It also gets the toxins that cyanobacteria produce.
But why would it need a toxic stuff?
Well, it protects the tree. So down in the jungle, and I mean, there's nothing that eats the leaves. Well, that was sort of the inspiration, because I was thinking about this problem, thinking about this village. Suddenly realized they're eating the flying foxes, and then when I suddenly realized the cyanobacteria in the roots, I thought, maybe that's the source. It was April 2003. We discovered two things. We discovered that cyanobacteria produced this toxin. We also found that BMAA was in the brain tissues of the villagers who died of the disease, but not in control patients. And we discovered it was in the brain tissues of Alzheimer's patients. Wow. I said, you know, we could be self-deluded here. We really need outside eyes. People have never heard this. To give us some confidential feedback. What are you proposing? I said, we should go to Stockholm right now. And they said, why? I said, well, what I'll do is I'll contact the Royal Academy of Sciences in Stockholm, ask them for a closed meeting. We'll have neurologists, chemists, and then we'll wait for gunfire. And they will point out to us all the things that were wrong in any way that we've deluded ourselves here. So we gave our results for about an hour, and then we stopped and said, okay, we welcome your comments and criticisms, and there was no reaction. And of course, I'm very fond of Swedes, and they're extremely polite people, but they are academics. And I said, you know, we've budgeted 2 hours here just to hear your criticisms. And I think it was Sebastian Conradi, famous neurologist from the Karolinska Institute. He spoke, he said, you know, when we first heard of your ideas, it was cocktail party jokes here in Stockholm. Now, we'd like to join with you. And so that was the beginning of the consortium.
Rachel Dunlop works with Ken Rogers in Sydney, Australia.
In the world of science, people that work in different disciplines don't tend to talk to each other. So we don't understand what plant biologists are doing. We don't understand what marine biologists are doing. I'm a cell biologist. We work in a little silo, and Paul Cox breaks down those silos by coming to people with different areas of expertise.
Paul Cox came to you because he had this comment that
BMAA, the toxin he found in Guam, could mess something up in our bodies.
So what did he tell you, and what did he ask you to do?
He knew that we had this special technique, and we had a series of skills that we used in our lab routinely. And he came and said, well, look, I know you guys work in heart disease research, but would you mind just stopping all of that and maybe coming and doing motor neuron disease, ALS?
And reading your paper now, you did find an answer for him.
We did, which was unexpected and also very exciting. We found that BMAA can actually be mistaken for another amino acid that our body naturally uses to make proteins.
So it's a little bit like a battle here between BMAA, the toxic substances that comes into the body, and the serine that is naturally occurring in there. So it's a tug of war.
I think that's a good analogy, a tug of war, because if there's more BMAA in the cell, it will win the war. So this may be a trigger in susceptible people for ALS, motor neuron disease.
Rachel Dunlop and Ken Rogers deliver a crucial piece to the toxic puzzle. They can explain what's happening in the cells. The BMAA toxin corrupts the body's protein building processes. And they also discover that the body's own amino acid L-serine in higher doses can counter the effects of the toxin. Next piece of this toxic puzzle comes from an unlikely place, Kuwait. During the Desert Storm campaign, soldiers faced and defeated the enemy on the battlefield, unaware of a hidden killer blowing in the wind. Bo called up his friend, Kirby Kearns in Qatar.
They don't want
You know,
to
after the
Desert
Desert War,
Storm Syndrome.
in Kuwait in the early 1990s, a lot of American soldiers came down with ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, as it's called here in the United States. And no one has been able to explain why. But Paul Cox has an idea, and this is where we need your help. So we need to get an air filter from a truck that drives in Qatar. Do you think you can find one?
I can do that. I know just the place actually. I know just where I can go to get one.
The roads stretch across the desert landscape with many trucks delivering supplies to the U.S. Air Base inland. If anything is sailing in the wind, truck engines will suck it in.
Hey, hello. Hi, my name is Kirby. Thank you for helping me, man. It's just for me? Yes. Thank you, man. Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, please. Thank you.
Piece of the Desert arrives in Jackson Hole.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Thanks very much.
Paul Cox and his team are about to make a surprising discovery. Stuck in the filter, they find cyanobacteria. Is it really possible that there are cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, in a desert? Suddenly, a whole new world opens up to Paul Cox. In Qatar, Paul teams up with Renee Risher and Aspasia Hadziaftino. Piece of the puzzle is about to drop into place.
This desert does hold an important and very dark secret. Something out here triggered ALS in those personnel team, and I'm determined to figure out what. That's incredible. Look at it. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at this thing. Oh, yeah. That thing's incredible. Oh, look at that. Do you see how fast that's green? Renee, get down here. Look at this. Look how green it is right there. I mean, incredible. What I'm going to do is to photograph this while it's dry. Let's pour some water on it. See how long it takes to drain off. It's usually when a really hot day, we can see the green right away, but I can already see the pigmentation here. We think of the desert as dry, brown, and dusty. Actually, this desert here is one gigantic green cyanobacterial mat given the right conditions, and I aim to prove that. When we find that the same cyanobacteria produce neurotoxins, we realize that cyanobacteria are in desert dust. In the case of Operation Desert Storm, the ground forces and mechanics that worked on the helicopters were deployed for less than a year, and yet they had a doubling of the rate of ALS 10 years after that deployment, which we believe is linked to their inhalation of dust.
I arrive in Paris, eager to meet a person who has inspired me to go on this hunt for the hidden killer. One thing is what you can see in a lab. It's very different to meet with people who can give a scientific search a human face. This will be the first time that I meet Ellie O'Connell. We have been communicating via emails for a long time now. And she used to live in Santa Barbara, and right now she has moved to Paris. Her ALS is far gone, and she writes these very inspiring emails to me, and she's so full of life. She's so full of fighting this disease that has struck her and her family. And she sent me this picture of herself and her husband David before the ALS went too far. And they have now made Paris their home. I'm so amazed that she can smile about her situation. And she writes, I have now decided that I am in a battle with God. I think I told him that either he shows up or I'm boycotting him. So that's where I'm at.
How are you?
Nice to see
I feel
you.
like I already know you.
Huh?
I feel like I already know you.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Yeah. Only 10–15% of ALS cases are genetic in nature and are hereditary. Ellie belongs to the group who has sporadic ALS without known causes. She was already far into her illness before she realized she had a problem. So what did you do?
I ignored it from November of 2010 until June of 2011. I didn't do anything. I just thought I have a backache or I'm very tired. Like I couldn't cut my fingernails. I couldn't do my eyebrows, but I didn't do anything about it. I went to an acupuncturist and that was it. And then finally it was David's birthday and I thought, okay, let me go see a doctor. And like within 5 minutes, she said, I think you need to see a neurologist. And I'm like, what's that? I had no idea what a neurologist was. So I said, okay. So I go the next day and the neurologist looks at me and he looked at me really weird.
When they didn't tell you what was happening to you, what did that make you feel?
I felt bad for them.
For them?
Yes,
Can you explain that? How can it be painful for them?
because they knew what my future was. I didn't know because I had no idea what ALS was. Even when they told me, I had to go home and Google it. And I just sat there and I read, will die, will die, will die. And I'm like, this cannot be happening to me. And then like paralyzed, vegetable, breathing tube, feeding tube. And I'm like, you're joking me. An hour ago, you know, I was okay. I thought I had a sciatica. And now you're telling me like, this is it?
So does it feel for you like you have had ALS too?
Definitely. Definitely.
You have it more than I do.
Well, I have it differently. I mean,
You're more
because it
affected.
affects you emotionally, it affects you financially, it affects, I mean, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. So, I mean, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And there's no going back.
It's not like someone comes and rips your face off, like you lose everything slowly. So nothing is a shock.
I mean, in the beginning, fairly quickly,
Yeah,
there was slow processes. Fairly quickly, you lost the ability to walk.
so it's not like a shock.
Yeah.
But it's horrible,
Okay.
but it's a slow horrible. So nothing like I feel for people who have like cancer, like they're physically sick. I don't feel sick ever, you know, like I feel great. I just can't move my body. My brain is perfect and luckily I can still move my head. And I could feel everything, but I don't feel sick. Well, I've never been sick since I've had ALS. Never even had a cold. This was
Funny
it.
you're saying that. I've never been sick since I.
Right. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's so true though. That was the first time I was sick.
What do you feel like when I'm joking about it?
I love it. I love all that. All my friends know that like we are gonna joke about this until like the day I die.
Back in Jackson, Paul's work goes into high gear.
What we really do in this little cabin in the middle of this rural part of Wyoming is produce hope. Every morning, we wake up, walk into this building, into this cabin, thinking about ALS. And the work that's come out of here has been pretty amazing. The ALS patients don't have time to sit around and wait for decades, for years. They're dying now. They need help right now. I mean, we used to put pictures of the patients up in the laboratory. And the people I work with here are totally amazing people.
The two Jameses, Powell and Metcalf, and Sandra Bennett, are part of this team.
Dr. Sandra Bennett gave up full lifetime tenure at California State University to come here. I was taking James Metcalf, we were out canoeing one afternoon, and I said, would you like me to drop you back to your apartment? He said, no, take me to the lab. I said, well, it's 10 p.m. So there's time to do one more experiment. And that's the mode of my colleagues here. It's like, do one more, go further. Let's keep going forward. What we've done is build a virtual pharmaceutical firm. I've gone around the world to the smartest people I could find. I've gone, I said, you know, you're top of your field, you won prizes, you published books, published papers. Please now stop and help us with this problem. So far, I haven't had a single person turn it. What I really want to do in this building is to bring together these 50 scientific minds, these geniuses from around the world, focus them on this problem, and then have drugs that walk out of here that can help change the trajectory for ALS patients. When I took my PhD at Harvard, I was criticized by my doctoral committee for being emotionally tied to my work. To me, the emotion for me, the compassion, the love, is what's driven this research.
My hunt for the hidden killer has brought me to Ohio. I was not quite prepared for what I was about to see. Grand Lake St. Mary's is like an open wound, infested and covered by slimy green cyanobacteria. Vacation season, the beach, not a single person. By scanning this sign here, I can actually get the latest information about the situation in the lake, and it is a scary reading about harmful algae blooms. And we know, of course, they are also cyanobacteria. They tell me what to do and not to do in here. Stay out of the water. Don't let the kids play with the debris and green stuff along the shoreline. Do not let pets drink the water. Don't cook with this water. And see a doctor if you think you or your kid has swallowed any of this lake water. But this is also the drinking water for thousands of people. Fish out of this lake is probably their drinking water. But this guy explains to me he's only using the catch as bait fish when fishing in other lakes. I hope he sticks to that story. Many thoughts flow through my head as the green water meanders through the Ohio landscape. They tell me the drinking water in the city of Salina is still safe, that the authorities are on top of the situation. But do they really know about the new toxin found, the BMAA?
We begin with hundreds of thousands of people in Toledo, Ohio, without water now for a second day. They're having to live without the most basic necessities, limited showers, no washing dishes. You can see right there, lines of people forming, waiting to get their hands on a limited supply of bottled water.
The governor of Ohio and the mayor of Toledo say new tests on the water show improvement, but they're not ready to lift the ban.
Over decades, Lake Erie has been the poster child of troubled waters in the United States. Dave Spangler has spent a lifetime here taking tourists fishing. Today, he brings me and scientist George Bulljohn out on the lake, fishing for facts.
We saw this coming. I'm not skeptical with respect to BMAA as a neurotoxic compound. I'm completely on board with that. But is this a location where people are going to die of ALS as a consequence of living here and being exposed to these blows? It's still an open question.
Nearby, a reconnaissance flight from NASA's Glenn Research Station takes off to monitor the lake from above. The situation is alarming. Cyanobacterial blooms now seem to be a regular occurrence. The lake is like a green soup. From NASA's airplane, they can see the boat cutting through the cyanobacteria as it heads out to Toledo's water intake.
So go through the denial, the shock, and then being upset.
I'll grab a water sample so you can see what the algae look like.
Dumping industry, chemicals. The whole Ohio River, all the way up. Big pond.
It's bad enough. It's colonies of cyanobacteria giving the lake a greenish hue.
And what's happened today is that wind action has dispersed the surface scum that these organisms form. But you can see that they form colonies.
To the average person that comes out here, they may not ever realize what they're looking at. And this whole situation continues to upset me.
Monitoring from space, the extent of the cyanobacterial bloom is obvious. The blooms extend for weeks and months, and in the middle of the green goo, the city of Sandusky is taking its drinking. Monitoring is a must, because this is the water they pump in from Lake Erie, filled with cyanobacteria. Before this can be consumed as drinking water fit for humans, a lot of work must be done. They keep a close eye on what's in the water, before and after treatment, to make sure they protect the citizens of Sandusky.
These are our alarm bells, and the best identification is visual. If I can see it as it's coming into my plant, I know exactly what's coming in. The cyanotoxins and stuff shoot up, it kind of gives us an idea that something's coming in, and then once I visualize it and see it, I know it's here in the plant. Water's very safe. Yeah. Last year at this time, we had a lot coming in, we never got a detect in our drinking tap water.
They know how to stop the cyanobacteria causing acute toxicity. But can their system protect people from the new piece of the puzzle, the BMAA, which is a substance they do not look for and do not have a capacity to test for? Up the coast in Ohio is Conneaut, a small town known for its fishing and inviting beaches. What was once a young kid's paradise has now turned into an adult man's hell.
I meet with Mike Helfenstein, who has recently lost his wife to ALS.
No, when we went to school, the environmental issues were never discussed. When we were out fishing, that's all we did. And, we thought of Lake Erie as being a very clean place to have fun. So there was never a thought, never a discussion, ever. There was never a discussion about the quality of water. Now that I look at water, whether it be the Lake Erie, whether it be the creek running into Lake Erie, I have suspect to all of those issues. Now I look into the water to see if it's colored different. I start to process information different than I did prior to my own staff.
But you're pretty convinced that you have seen so many ALS cases here. So you think you have a cluster of those diseases here?
It's my opinion based on what I've seen, and that is, there is a multitude of ALS cases which should not be on the radar of this community. We should have maybe one every 5 or 6 years. And we have documented 7 or 8 just from one doctor in this town.
His wife, Vincina, was a very active woman, running 2 restaurants at the time she got sick. She soon found herself in a wheelchair with rapidly declining health. Before she died, she had a chance to welcome a grandkid and become a grandmother. Since childhood, she was lovingly called Squeak.
Absolutely. This is my wife.
So once you knew Squeak has ALS, your life changed.
Completely, instantly. It literally took 2 years of tests to come up with the diagnosis.
And then 1 year.
It was over.
So when you realized she was diagnosed with ALS, you started to fight for a cause again, didn't you? Like you had done with MS before, but now it was part of your family's life.
Yes, I was receiving phone calls of people that had ALS or family members who called me and said, my spouse, my mother, my father, whatever, has died.
And were you surprised?
Completely. I mean, I never heard the word in our community ever. I mean, we've definitely got the discussion going on here in Ashtabula County. People are talking about ALS today.
Mike started a project to track ALS cases in Kanya. Not sure if life was better here. He named the project the Vincina Protocol after his wife. Soon he learned that many families in this quaint little town were struck by the disease.
Now, of course, there's also this discussion with cyanobacteria in Lake Erie and other things in the water that also comes in here.
And at this particular moment, our health department does not want to talk about cyanobacteria. They don't believe it's an issue, and they don't want to talk about it.
It's not easy, is it, when you're looking for those answers?
It's very frustrating. I mean, I did not understand the political domain and how sensitive even our local politicians, even though they had nothing to do with the problem, it's almost though they have been told that they cannot talk about this issue.
The map Mike produced based on his own research is alarming. It is a first picture of what could be an ALS hotspot along the shores of Lake Erie. He's urging the scientists to complete what he has started.
We believe today, as just private citizens, everything that we're hearing, we have an issue in Lake Erie that's not being talked about. People are choking to death. It's a sad story, but they don't believe it's going to affect them, and they're basically correct. It's a small percentage of people that this is affecting, but it is affecting people, and that's what's important.
And you don't know who is going to.
It is definitely a flip of the coin.
So the eating shouldn't be.
It's not a problem. I do sometimes get something.
It's a situation taken very seriously by specialist Eric Pioro at the Cleveland Clinic. He diagnosed Vincina's ALS and cared for her during her illness. Today, he's seeing Nicole Crawford, one of many new ALS patients. He keeps an eye on the progression of the illness, offers comfort and support, but is unable to cure or halt the disease.
I'm eager to meet Eric Pioro, a dedicated specialist who has started to ask questions and do research to find a reason behind what seems to be hotspots of ALS in Ohio and the region he serves.
you are actually creating digital records of all your patients and all the information, which could be really useful for you in this case.
That's right, it is, because one of the things that we've been looking at and that I've been particularly interested in and seeing kind of a preponderance, if you will, of patients that may be coming from this northwestern part of Ohio and surrounding states, kind of along the Great Lakes area. And not infrequently, they'll be coming from these areas that I often wonder, is there something that they may be exposed to in some of these regions?
Thanks to the digital records kept at the clinic, Eric and his team of scientists have now plotted more than 1,000 ALS cases on the map. Mike's fears confirmed there are clear indications of hotspots. The scientists' work is preliminary, and funding is now needed to dig deeper. The alarm bell has definitely been rung. Lake in New Hampshire, USA. The fog is not only beautiful, it also shrouds the next piece in the toxic puzzle.
I wanted to understand why there might be a higher incidence of ALS around Lake Scum in New Hampshire. And we didn't know really why we were seeing a grouping of patients around this lake. 3 of those patients were over a 6-month period in 1 year were diagnosed. We went to limnologists, experts on water biology, and we're told that amongst other things that Lake Muscoma had frequent cyanobacterial blooms. And then we went to the literature and looked and found that the whole cyanobacteria were potentially linked to ALS and Guam, where there was a risk of about 150-fold higher risk of developing ALS than in the rest of the world. In Lake Muscoma, it was about 25 to 40 times higher than expected. It's kind of alarming. And we've since found about 11 clusters in northern New England. All of them have 6 or more cases. Almost all of those clusters are very close to water bodies that have had cyanobacterial blooms. So you can imagine if you're living on a lake that has frequent annual cyanobacterial blooms, you might easily be exposed on a chronic basis to microorganisms in the air.
I decided to visit with Dr. Stommel's team working at the lake. Alexander Baltil and Patricia Hennigan samples the lakes.
What we're trying to do is see how much people are actually breathing in and what people's exposures are. So if we take this into consideration in the lung capacity of a person, we can actually figure out, depending on which water body or what day, how much people are breathing in. We were first.
Okay. That's just about right.
It's a revolutionary approach, measuring cyanobacteria in the air rather than in the water.
And we looked at a few lung samples, including an ALS patient, and he lived along the shore here. And unfortunately, he had a very aggressive form of ALS and didn't live long, but he died during the bloom. And we did get an autopsy, and we were able to find some cyanobacteria in his lungs. It's certainly worrisome that you're finding these, potentially toxic microorganisms in the lungs. If you have an active bloom, I would be concerned that it might be a possible risk factor for neurodegeneration.
The satellites also monitor the situation in the Baltic Sea. Cyanobacterial blooms are severe and paint an almost Van Gogh-like image near the Swedish island of Gotland. Pollution from 9 countries feeds the blooms that spread with the currents. It's at least as bad as in the USA, but people seem to enjoy their short summer and aware of the acute dangers. Or don't they care? Scientists, however, have long been aware of the accelerating situation in the Baltic.
Yeah.
This is visible. searching for more pieces to the toxic puzzle.
Now we're going down.
Okay.
Plankton that is lowered through the soup of cyanobacteria.
Do you think there's a bloom down here below?
I think they are sort of quite dispersed in the water point like that.
So there's not a single layer.
Absolutely.
Well, they have a lot more here than that.
Peter Bergman and Sarah Reedberg are not surprised when they see the result. They've seen this for years. But for Paul Cox, this is worrying.
Wow.
This is Baltic cyanobacteria, and I think what really amazes me is that the boat hasn't moved. We just put this down 10 meters, pulled it up, and we have the equivalent of, I would call it Baltic pea soup. Is that fair? 3 species of cyanobacteria here.
Stockholm University's Baltic Sea Lab. Paul voices his concerns.
So here's the big question we'll get at. The Karolinska Institute shows that ALS is actually increasing in Sweden.
Yeah,
So the question is it increasing because there's more exposure to cyanobacteria?
well, that's a very good question. And yes, there is a risk that increase in blooms will cause an increase in ALS. And then you also have the risk of water, drinking water reservoirs may be affected by BMAA too. And so we have a huge number of lakes in Sweden that have blooms of cyanobacteria as well, and have fishes and so on. So yeah, there is definitely a possibility that there is a connection between these two phenomena: bigger blooms, more ALS.
Like he does wherever he travels, Paul collects material for analysis, and he soon learns that the level of toxic BMAA in this sample is very high.
The cyanobacteria release BMAA, and then they all die. Sort of like mass suicide. They're washed up along the beach here, they dry, so it's dried up here, but still we see some potential for green life here underneath. Perhaps at the low level, the BMAA is produced in the cyanobacteria. It doesn't make that big a threat, but if it starts accumulating with fish and we eat the fish, then it's a big problem.
But what is it that we can learn from the scientists here that you haven't seen in other parts of the world, or how do these things connect to what you have seen?
What the scientists are bringing here to the table in the Baltic is putting the ecosystem together. From cyanobacteria to zooplankton to small fish to bigger fish, bottom fish. And we have here a clear exposure of BMAA for human beings.
No place is spared. In Australia, the local radio transmits stern warnings from the government.
That's where they think them.
19
Many of our region's popular river destinations now affected by the blue-green algae outbreak, which stretches hundreds of kilometres along the Murray River. And we're hearing reports that some people are ignoring the advice to keep clear of the potentially toxic water and wakeboarding and water skiing anyway. If you're thinking about doing the same thing, think again. Rachel Dunlop has been researching the links between blue-green algae toxins and illnesses like Alzheimer's and motor neuron disease.
So I was concerned to see that people didn't seem to either understand the potential toxicity of something like this, or they just ignored the warnings. And indeed, some people even swim in algal-infested waters because they're not aware it might be a risk.
Toxic blooms are everywhere, and irrigation canals distribute the water to many fields.
And in addition to the fact that BMAA is found in seafood, it can also be found in things like wheat. And this was revealed in a report published last year, showing that if you watered wheat with irrigation water that is contaminated with this toxin, it can actually get stuck into the proteins of the wheat. So then that can get into the food chain, and that's where you can become exposed to BMAA. Now, in Australia, we're currently investigating what appears to be a hotspot or a cluster of motor neuron disease in the areas in New South Wales that include Griffith and Leeton in the Riverina region. And this is where a lot of crops are grown, a lot of crops are irrigated from rivers, and so this might be an area where people are getting exposed to this algal toxin. we should be cautious about alerting people to the issue of blue-green algal blooms because BMAA is not always present in algal blooms. It depends on the conditions. Obviously, not everyone who's exposed to this toxin is going to get motor neuron disease. Otherwise, we'd all have it since toxin is almost everywhere in this country. So clearly people need other forms of susceptibility in order to contract ALS. So probably a genetic susceptibility and other susceptibilities that we don't know about yet. So we don't want to be scaremongering about this. We just want people to be aware that this is an issue so they can reduce their risk as much as possible.
Okinawa, Japan.
It really hit me out of the blue because I've gone to all the villages where there's a very high rate of ALS and Alzheimer's. One day I thought, why don't I find villages where there's no record of the disease? So I thought I'd search here. Because if the people are 100, 105, 104 years old, then they still may have some sort of intact neurological system. I knew when I came here that they were old. What I didn't realize before I came here was that they have total recall of their lives. They move like ballerinas. They have this fluidity of motion.
Super, merci this. Good boy. Oh my God. Oh,
The serenity of the Ogimi village is striking. The aging population tends to its gardens and orchards. Plants are harvested for taste, of course, but at the same time, they create an unusually healthy diet. Even if Paul finds interesting answers among the local farmers, it's in a kitchen and local restaurant this ethnobotanist feels right at home. To see how people use plants in their cooking is exactly how ethnobotanists seek their answers. He analyzes complete dinners, weighs the ingredients, and in the lab back home, he looks for interesting substances. It's all about connecting the dots, laying the puzzle pieces out.
Seen a 97-year-old woman, Tyra Sumiko, who is collecting seaweeds on the beach. She comes out every day to collect them, dries them, and then uses them in her cooking and her diet. I was astonished as an ethnobotanist to see they're using all these different species of seaweeds, that they're getting their major caloric content from tofu, not rice. I just saw a lot of differences between this culture and the rest of Japan that really struck me. I try to figure out what are the most frequent parts of their diet, what do they eat the most frequently. And then about this time, we started having our laboratory work showing that L-serine plays an important role. So I took their diet back to Jackson Hole Laboratories, screened it for L-serine, and we're blown away. It was off the charts in terms of L-serine. These people are eating a remarkably loaded diet in the US of L-serine.
After many trips to Okinawa, Paul asked me to join him there. He believes he has found a vital piece of his puzzle in this small village. If the substance L-serine in their diet really counteracts the toxic BMAA, then the local food market will add to the story.
Yeah, so people stop here in this little market. They come up to Ogimi. It's just filled with all these amazing things in here, you know, that the local people eat. For example, this is called komu. This comes clear from Hokkaido, maybe, 1,200 kilometers to the north, and they've had a historical trade with Hokkaido. But it's used in a lot of their festivals, a lot of their special feasts. And this is extremely rich in L-serine.
It is?
Oh, there.
let's buy that one.
There's a lot you can buy here, isn't it?
Well, these are sweet potatoes. They call them in their language Benny Emo. Again, extremely high in L-serine.
But is it the same sweet potato that you can find in North America or?
It's a different sort of type, but we've tested the ones in North America. It has enough serine in it that from now on, when I'm ordering the hamburger, I have asked for sweet potato fries.
But for them, they don't pick and eat those things because they know that they just happen to be part
They
of their
just happen
diet.
to have this diet. They don't know anything about L-serine. So basically, we're looking here, it looks like I guess like an agricultural market. What I see here is a pharmacy of neuroprotection.
Amazing.
You know, we have cellular culture. We have fruit flies, now other laboratory animals. But to see something happening in people really made me a believer. These people taught me that you can live a full life, 100 years, 110 years, some of them, and have complete access to all your memories, to be able to make short-term memories, to move like a ballerina, and it's incredible, isn't it? They're beating me. They're a lot better than I am at this. They're all laughing at me. L-serine ties all this together. And I think that within 10 or 20 years' time, people will be taking much more L-serine than they are today.
That's an amino acid, by the way. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
In Paris, Victor goes through a daily routine of mixing L-serine powder with fruit for Ellie. L-serine is not a medicine from the pharmacy, but a food supplement bought on the internet. Ellie is sure this is a matter of life or death for her.
Oh, good. But I feel like, I always felt like the cure for ALS is gonna come out of left field. Because the regular doctors have had since the 1800s to try to figure this out, and they just can't figure it out. And I also think that nature will cause disease, but there's also a cure in nature somewhere.
Hello there. Bonjour, pleasure. I'm Paul Cox, here, the CEO. Is that okay? Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to see you. Yeah.
Mr. Fox.
Hey, nice to see you.
My hero has arrived. The first time I ever was introduced to Paul Cox, my thoughts were, I'm already so far gone. What can it hurt? Why not look for outside resources? But when you're this sick, there is never too much hope.
Briefly tell what your experience has been with L-serine.
In the beginning, I had to have my breathing machine 24 hours a day. Could not even take it off, barely to blow my nose. I would gasp for breath. It was horrible. Within, I think I started it in June. By July, I could sit a whole day without it. I was breathing like none of this, just breathing like it was a miracle.
At this point, Ellie, unfortunately, I don't think we can reverse it. Someday somebody will. But then what you're teaching me is that you expressed there was some redeeming functionality.
Absolutely. With my breathing.
With your breathing, to be stronger.
I mean, like, but also just like a overall feeling of goodness.
Yes, right.
Like I feel like I have inner strength, even though these legs aren't moving, I still feel like they're strong legs.
Yeah.
Strange.
That's
I
how.
feel like a billion bucks.
You feel like a million
I
bucks.
know that sounds crazy,
No, that's great.
but I feel like a million bucks.
This is a true partnership. Where both learn from each other's experiences.
My next stop is Miami, Florida. At the university, they house one of the largest archives of brains donated by people who have died from ALS, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. Deborah Mash and David Davis are part of Paul's consortium.
Let's begin the processing then, and it'd be very interesting if we can look at the frozen hemisphere and see if there's any BMAA that we can detect. It's a great detective skill. Why would there be BMAA in the brains of people who died with ALS and Alzheimer's who grew up in North America? What could be a potential environmental source? That led us immediately to question the marine food web. So we went back to our colleagues, to Larry Brand and our colleagues at the Marine School, and they were the ones who pieced together that story.
The key starts here then.
Right, all the way down by 1 mile.
But even if the water out here is fairly clean, most of the time you still have problems with algae blooms.
Yeah. And again, under most conditions, even those toxic species are in low abundance. So you're not gonna see much of the toxin. It's not gonna really have an effect. But under certain conditions, you can have a large bloom of just this one species. At that point, now you have a high concentration of toxin that can kill a lot of organisms, can kill people or make people sick.
When you say it can kill people, I mean, what does it take? Swimming in the water of the Florida coast or?
Well, no, generally eating the seafood, clams, mollusks in general, they're filter feeding the algae out of the water. The vast majority of algae are nutritious. That's what they depend upon for the food. If you have a algal bloom of a toxic species, all of a sudden they acquire all this toxin. They can't get rid of the toxin. When you're eating that BMA-laden fish, you don't taste it, you don't smell it, you're not getting any immediate symptoms. So you can continue eating this fish. You're not going to know for 10 or 20 years. So that's much worse. As a scientist, I can only say, here's the evidence that we've got. You're taking a risk. I can't be absolutely certain that you're going to get Alzheimer's 20 years from now, but you're taking risks. It's a risk I would not take myself.
Florida was to deliver yet another piece of the puzzle. Unfortunately, this also involves the marine food web. Dolphins are seen swimming where they should not normally be found. They seem disoriented, lost, not unlike people with Alzheimer's disease, who also experience similar problems. Sometimes these dolphins end up dying on the beaches. Scientists taking care of the dead dolphins provide the research team with brain tissues, both from dolphins that have been stranded and from dolphins that have died in boating accidents. When Deborah Mash analyzes the brain tissues, she doesn't know which sample comes from which dolphin. She is blinded to the source of her samples.
We've always had dolphins strandings, okay? That has occurred. And people have a bunch of theories about why that can happen. Again, Larry Brand brings us some dolphin brains. We look at the data. I think Paul Cox was in town that time. I break the blind, I look and I go, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. All the ones that were stranded had BMA. The accidental kills did not. I said, I don't believe it. You could not make that data up. And again, we were blinded to condition. And we figure out that these apex predators have BMA.
Apex meaning they are high up in the food chain.
Just like we are. We're an apex predator, you and me. Sharks and dolphins, apex predators. So again, you don't want to overstate your data, but now we have that piece of the puzzle.
It's a scary thought. Do dolphins actually die from Alzheimer's or a similar illness that breaks down their brains when Florida waters clog up with toxic cyanobacteria? In the city of Stewart, along Florida's east coast, cyanobacteria forced the governor to declare a state of emergency.
Yes.
Algae anxiety running high tonight. New video of blue-green algae on the Treasure Coast.
Look at more of this mess. Our News Channel 5 crew spotting some dead fish in the algae near Alice Street, not far from the Roosevelt Bridge. Fears tonight that more sites like this are to come.
Now, residents have also been getting little face masks like these to protect themselves. We've been getting some as well. I've been wearing them today when we're around the water, not only to diffuse the smell a little bit, it really doesn't help much, but mainly to protect ourselves from the possible toxins that are released from this algae.
Martin County commissioners are demanding the St. Lucie locks be closed immediately, but that's ultimately up to the Army Corps of Engineers. And it ain't always worries. A swollen Lake Okeechobee in rainy season could break through the old earthen dikes surrounding them. But you see what amounts to more than 1 billion gallons a day of water pumping through those locks.
The source of the coastal disaster is Lake Okeechobee. Behind the levees, polluted water from the surrounding sugarcane fields nourish the water and cause the cyanobacteria to bloom. Arriving in the middle of the bloom, while Cox takes no chances.
I guess people might think I'm overreacting to have a dust mask, but we know from Dr. Stommel's work at Dartmouth that people potentially inhaling these toxins. Being out in the spring muck all day has been really tough. There's clearly one species of toxic cyanobacteria, maybe more.
Analysis of this sample actually shows 3 toxic species of cyanobacteria.
What's really worried is I'm out in full protective gear and I can see people and children out bathing, fishing, picnicking. So I'm really concerned. I spoke to the county commissioner in Martin County, Florida. They held an emergency meeting for the population. State health officials were prevented from coming. There seems to be a political issue I don't understand. People should not be exposed to cyanobacteria. Word needs to get out that these toxins are very dangerous.
Upon receiving worrying news from Paris, Paul immediately left to meet with Ellie O'Connell, who'd been admitted to hospital for care. The hospital did not allow Ellie to continue to eat the Algae, as it was not a registered drug but a food supplement. Her situation quickly worsened. She could no longer swallow, no longer eat or drink. Her life hung in the balance.
Well,
she had demanded to be released from the hospital, and when they met, she'd eaten the Algae for a week now, and there's a turn for the better.
Yeah, it was 6 weeks. Not able to swallow soup, and then suddenly you take cereal and you swallow some soup. That makes me happy. Oh, that's great. Looks like it did help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 1,000%.
Wow. I've been so moved by my interaction with the few patients who have on an experimental basis taken this drug. And it's been thrilling to me to see those patients that feel that L-serine has improved their health. It's slowed progression. It's given them more time with their loved ones.
The puzzle pieces are falling into place. David Davis has found the toxic BMAA only in brains from people who died from ALS, not in corresponding controls. He now slices thin layers of brain tissue from primates which have been fed food laced with BMAA. Only primates have the same brain and nervous systems as we have. It's a crucial experiment. If he can prove a direct link between the toxin and brain damage, it will be the biggest breakthrough yet.
These are actually alpha cells.
Oh, that's half a nipple.
Have Cox and his team finally been able to prove the connection between BMAA and cell damage in an animal model with primates?
What I'd really like to do before we see the results of the experiment is look at a human Alzheimer's brain. Can you zoom in and show me some neurofibrillary tangles and tangles? Or
Sure, I'm gonna zoom in on the hippocampus.
Okay, go ahead. Right in the hippocampus.
This is an area affected by Alzheimer's disease.
Okay. And I'm seeing here, it looks like we have some dead neurons in here.
that are filled with tau.
That's correct.
So this basically is the classical picture of Alzheimer's disease.
This is internal cortex of a vertebrate treated.
And it was fed DNA. Okay, now, wow, sorry, that's amazing. Because it looks to me like we've got neurons here filled with tau,
Correct.
just like in the Alzheimer's patient. We're seeing neurofibrillary tangle, long, and has never been seen before, ever in an animal.
No.
Wow. Sorry, I think that's amazing. This means that we're right. We're right, yeah. Fantastic. When we saw the images, we had our computers hooked up with Miami Brain Bank, us in Jackson Hole, my team, neuroscience associates in Tennessee. We're all looking at the images at the same time, neuropathology. And you could have heard a pin drop because all of a sudden, all of us saw beta amyloid plaques. We saw neurofibrillary tangles. And Dr. Switzer in Tennessee said, who put in these Alzheimer's patient slides? And I said, those are not Alzheimer's patients. Those are experimental animals. He says, no, this must be Alzheimer's. And we're saying, no, these are not Alzheimer's patients. So what happened here, and what I think is so stunning to us, is we began looking really at a problem experienced by a few villagers in a very remote island in the Pacific, and trying to understand what triggered this disease in these people. We then found out that the toxin they're exposed to occurs all around the world. You could be exposed to it sitting up in Lake Erie. You could be sitting in Stockholm and be exposed to this. You know, I mean, that was terrifying to us. And now to suddenly realize this includes not just ALS pathology, but Alzheimer's pathology, and with we add age, Parkinson's pathology. That was staggering to us.
It is an astonishing breakthrough.
Increased motor activity.
And hyperarousal.
For the botanist, Paul Cox, it's important that brain experts confirm the findings.
We assume, based on your seminal observations, that we've been exposed to BMA throughout life.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, this is the first demonstration of a naturalistic model of a human disorder.
Wow. Why? Why do you say that?
Because there's nothing in nature that gives us that effect. That's black and white. Seeing is believing.
It's a big moment. Paul has prepared the text for scientific publication.
BMA-induced formation of beta amyloid plaques.
The words environmental toxin and Alzheimer's stand out.
But you have been talking about ALS and BMA and cyanobacteria for years, but now you introduce the word Alzheimer's in.
Yeah, that's big news. I mean, it's been suggested that smoking, air pollution, exposure to organic solvents may increase risk of Alzheimer's disease, but the data are clear. Here we have experimental proof that exposure to a specific environmental toxin can trigger Alzheimer's disease. That's a big deal.
Before there is a public announcement of the results, Paul meets with his colleagues from around the world at their annual get-together. Here I meet them all again, the scientists I have met and filmed with for a few years. It's almost like a school reunion where people are eager to talk about their latest results, and surely also follow up on life in general. They arrived from around the world, from Sweden, Australia, Qatar, Florida, Wyoming, Wisconsin, and New Hampshire. They come from France and South Africa.
I was actually sort of depressed the day before because I just didn't know how people would receive it. Everybody here has done a lot of work on this. It's been a real thrill for me to be part of the consortium and see all the super things you're doing. And what we discovered really brilliant. And we found extraordinarily high significance. Chronic exposure to BMA triggers the formation of neurofibrillary tangles. And this, to me, if I can just parenthetically observe, suggests we may have a public health crisis. We don't know how high a dose you need before you start affecting 50% of the population.
It's a masterful teamwork and a great result accepted by the greater scientific community. In Miami, I have made an appointment with Walter Bradley, a world-leading neurologist who himself has spent a lifetime trying to find the missing piece in the ALS puzzle.
So you call this a game changer? It's a major step forward, a step forward that everyone's been asking for a very long time, and now it is here. How does the field, of any field, look at an outsider coming in? And of course, they're skeptical. And some of the people who've had their careers vested in this are not just skeptical, they're threatened. And so there are significant problems that happen for somebody coming from outside the field. That's the pushback that he's suffered all the way through. His track record nevertheless makes it clear that those people were Luddites. Were resisting something that in the end should not have been resisted.
But there is an elephant in the room, or maybe I should say an elephant in my food store. And unfortunately, it takes me to the section of the store where I normally look for the healthy and important items. This is spirulina juice. Spirulina is the commercial name for a group of cyanobacteria. Yes, cyanobacteria, the same stuff that we have been looking at in Lake Erie, along the Florida coast, the Baltic Sea, and all the other places we visited for this film project. The weird thing is that there is no testing of commercial products looking for the BMAA before this hits the shelves in the food stores. And searching the internet, I will find spirulina in all forms, such as juice, powder, gel caps, and tablets. But scientists in Canada have now presented breakthrough information about the toxic BMAA in spirulina products. Because what they have found is a call to action. They conclude, not all spirulina products tested positive for BMAA, but raw material samples of unprocessed spirulina all tested positive for BMAA. So maybe this glass of spirulina juice doesn't contain toxic material, but another product will. I have no way of knowing. Is it worth playing Russian roulette with our health, knowing there is a risk to get ALS or Alzheimer's? This could be the end of a journey that has lasted for 4 years. I have followed and questioned Paul at every turn. None of us knew where the science would lead us, and none of us knew which stories we would tell or which people we would meet. I have had reasons to contemplate over the work done by scientists and which role they play in society. While some have found reasons to be part of a public discussion, others insist on restraint with comments that can worry and create conflict.
It's the structure of scientific revolutions. You have to take a risk. Paul's a risk taker. I've seen the puzzle pieces go down, and every time Paul puts another piece of that puzzle down, or something in my laboratory fits in his puzzle, you double down. You know, so I've been playing this poker game for a while, right alongside of Paul Collins. I think he's a winner.
The toxic puzzle has many pieces. One by one, they've fallen into place. Science has opened up doors to a future which is both threatening and yet promising.
This is like a slow toxin, and it's a silent killer in a sense, because we don't know that it's in the water that we're drinking. We don't know it's in the food that we're eating, but we now know that it can cause these neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease.
Their work has created hope for ALS patients and their families.
Now we're talking about Alzheimer's disease. Right, for people who reach the age of 85, there's a 50-50 chance they're gonna have Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease is taking millions of people and it's costing trillions of dollars.
We now know that changing our diet can prevent the toxins from destroying our brains.
We need to keep the hope. We need to keep up, being hopeful that we're gonna solve this puzzle. And it really is a big, big puzzle that we're finding little pieces to and trying to see pictures to make the whole understandable. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Maybe soon, the scientists will lay down the missing piece, allowing us to bring back our loved ones from the darkness of brain disorders, regain lucidity, and perfect health.
Are we closer to a cure? I would say, I don't want to use the word cure, but I think we're close to prevention. And that's better than cure.
My real hope is that this can open a new avenue, a new way of thinking about these illnesses. And might shed not only new scientific insight, but give patients hope.
Well, when you're this sick, there is never too much hope. Like, if you told me to lick a tree, I probably would. Yeah, I put all my hope in Paul, because he's the only one that's ever given me like any inch of hope.
Hope is what will complete and negate the toxic puzzle.
Wow, was that ever informative? I'm gonna stop share and I am going to go over here too. Okay, okay, somebody can flip the switch. I'm gonna stop. The recording. I'm assuming I've stopped recording. Pause, stop.